At dinner, my sister said loudly, "Don't ask her about her career. It's too embarrassing." Her new boyfriend just watched quietly. Then he looked at me and said, "So should I tell them who signed my paycheck this morning?" Her face drained of color. Growing up, my older sister Natalie always made sure everyone knew she was the golden child. She graduated top of her class, married a corporate lawyer named Bradley, and spent the next 15 years perfecting her image of suburban success. I took a different path, one that involved risk sleepless nights and building something from nothing. 11 years ago, I founded a tech consulting firm called Apex Solutions. We specialized in cybersecurity infrastructure for mid-sized companies looking to scale. The first 3 years were brutal. I worked from a studio apartment, ate ramen more nights than I cared to admit, and fielded rejection after rejection from potential clients who thought I was too young or too inexperienced. Natalie would call during those years with thinly veiled concern. "Are you sure this is sustainable?" she'd ask. Bradley says most startups fail within 5 years. But slowly, methodically, we grew. I hired 3 brilliant engineers who believed in the vision. We landed our first major contract with a manufacturing company in Ohio, then another with a healthcare provider in Texas. By year 5, we had 20 employees and revenue that finally felt real. By year 8, we'd expanded to 2 offices and started attracting attention from larger corporations who needed exactly what we offered. Natalie's calls became less frequent during this time. She was busy with her own life, renovating her house, joining the country club, making sure her 2 kids attended the right private schools. When we did talk, she'd steer conversations away from my work. "How's your personal life?" she'd ask instead, as though my career was something to be politely avoided. Last month, our mother called to announce that Natalie had started dating someone new. Her divorce from Bradley had been finalized 8 months earlier after he'd left her for a paralegal at his firm. Mom seemed relieved that Natalie was moving forward. "His name is Kevin, and he works in technology," she explained. "Natalie seems quite taken with him." The family dinner was scheduled for a Saturday evening in late September at our parents' house in Connecticut. Mom had gone all out with a full spread roasted chicken garlic, mashed potatoes, green beans, almondine, and her famous apple pie for dessert. I arrived on time, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. Natalie showed up 15 minutes later with Kevin in tow. He was younger than Bradley, maybe late 30s, with an easy smile and a confident handshake. "Great to meet you," he said warmly. "I've heard a lot about the family." We settled around the dining table and Mom began serving dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first. Dad talked about his golf game. Mom discussed her book club's latest selection, and Natalie shared updates about her kids' school activities. Kevin asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know everyone. Then Dad turned to me. "How's business going?" "Last time we talked, you mentioned landing a contract with that pharmaceutical company." I opened my mouth to respond, but Natalie cut me off with a laugh that sounded forced. "Don't ask her about her career. It's too embarrassing." The table fell silent. Mom's fork paused midway to her mouth. Dad frowned slightly. I felt heat rising in my chest, but kept my expression neutral. Kevin looked between us, confused. "Embarrassing." Natalie waved her hand dismissively. "She runs this little tech thing. It's fine for her, but you know how those small businesses are. Barely scraping by. Always one bad quarter from folding." I just don't want Dad to feel uncomfortable asking when we all know she's struggling. The assumptions in her voice stung more than the words themselves. She hadn't asked about my company in years. She had no idea what we'd built or where we stood, but she'd constructed this narrative in her mind that my choice to build something unconventional meant I'd failed. Kevin's expression shifted. Something clicked behind his eyes. He set down his wine glass carefully and looked directly at me. "What's your company called?" "Apex Solutions," I replied evenly. His eyebrows rose. A slow smile spread across his face. "You're the CEO of Apex Solutions." "I am." The recognition on his face was unmistakable. He pressed his lips together, clearly trying to decide how to handle what he'd just discovered. Natalie looked between us, confusion mixing with growing dread. "What's going on?" she demanded. Kevin ignored her, still focused on me. "The keynote at the Tech Secure conference in Boston. That was you, wasn't it? March 15th. It was, I confirmed, watching Natalie's face grow paler. "I was there," Kevin continued. "Front row, actually. You talked about implementing layered security protocols for mid-tier companies without enterprise budgets. It was the best presentation of the entire conference. People were still talking about it at the networking reception." Dad leaned forward, interested. "You gave a keynote address." "She did more than that. Kevin said, a note of incredulity entering his voice. She's one of the most sought-after speakers in the cybersecurity field right now. I have colleagues who've been trying to book her for their company events for months. Natalie's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. I don't understand. You never mentioned— I mentioned it, I said quietly. I called you the week before the conference. I was nervous about the keynote and wanted to talk it through. You told me you had to go because you were meeting a friend for lunch and that we'd catch up later. We never did. The memory hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Mom looked stricken. Dad's jaw tightened. Kevin continued, seemingly unaware of the emotional grenade he'd just lobbed into the middle of dinner. Morrison Industries, where I work, has been trying to get a meeting with Apex Solutions for 2 years. We finally got on their client list 18 months ago, and it's been transformative for our entire operation. Morrison Industries, Dad repeated. That's the manufacturing conglomerate, isn't it? With facilities across 5 states. 6 states now, Kevin corrected. We expanded into Nevada last year, and we couldn't have done it without the security infrastructure that Apex Solutions designed for us. Our previous system was a patchwork nightmare. Different protocols at each location, no unified oversight, vulnerabilities everywhere. He turned back to me, enthusiasm overtaking his initial surprise. Your team did a complete overhaul. The risk assessment alone was over 300 pages, most comprehensive analysis we'd ever seen. And then the implementation, it was flawless. We went from constant anxiety about potential breaches to actually sleeping at night. You read the risk assessment, I asked, genuinely curious. Most clients skimmed the executive summary and called it done. Every page, he confirmed. Twice, actually. I wanted to make sure I understood all the recommendations before presenting them to our board. The section on social engineering vulnerabilities was particularly eye-opening. We'd been so focused on technical defenses that we completely overlooked the human element. Natalie finally found her voice. So you're saying her company is successful? The question would have been laughable if it didn't carry so much weight. Kevin's expression softened as he looked at his girlfriend. Apex Solutions is one of the top cybersecurity consulting firms in the region, he said. They're not just successful, they're industry leaders. How industry-leading are we talking, Mom asked tentatively. Kevin leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with what looked like genuine amusement. Should I tell them who signed my paycheck this morning? Natalie's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I'm the director of IT operations at Morrison Industries. Kevin explained, his voice calm, but pointed. We've been working with Apex Solutions for the past 18 months on our entire security infrastructure overhaul. Your sister's company is the reason we didn't suffer a catastrophic breach last fall that would have cost us tens of millions. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's mouth hung slightly open. Dad looked like he was trying to solve a complicated math problem in his head. Natalie's fingers gripped her napkin so tightly her knuckles went white. Kevin continued addressing the table. Now, Apex Solutions is one of the most respected cybersecurity consulting firms in the Northeast. They're not some struggling startup. They have 70 employees across 3 offices and annual revenue in the 8 figures. I was at a conference last month where their CEO, he nodded toward me, gave the keynote address on Zero Trust architecture implementation. 8 figures, Mom repeated faintly. I'd never advertised our financials to my family. It felt crass, and honestly, I hadn't thought they were particularly interested. I'd mentioned projects here and there, but Natalie's interruptions and dismissals had trained me to keep things vague. Last year's revenue was just over $12 million, I said, deciding that if we were doing this, we might as well do it properly. We're projected to hit $16.5 million this year if the pipeline closes the way we expect. The silence that followed was profound. Even the clink of silverware had ceased. 12 million, Natalie echoed, her voice hollow. That's revenue, not profit. I clarified, though. I wasn't sure why I felt the need to downplay it. After payroll, overhead, operational costs, and reinvestment into the company, my personal take-home is obviously much less. The growth this year is partly because we expanded to a 3rd office in Philadelphia last spring, which opened up the mid-Atlantic market for us. How much less, Dad asked bluntly. Dad, I protested. No, I want to know. You're my daughter, and I apparently have no idea what you've been accomplishing. Humor me. I sighed. Last year I took home around $800,000 in salary and distributions. This year will be higher. Mom made a small sound. Natalie looked like she might be sick. Kevin jumped in, perhaps sensing that the raw numbers were making things worse. But it's not really about the money, is it? It's about what the company has built, the reputation, the client relationships, the innovation. Tell them about the patent, he added, looking at me. You have a patent, Dad's eyebrows shot up. 2, actually, I admitted. We developed a proprietary threat detection algorithm that identifies anomalous network behavior patterns. It's more effective than traditional signature-based systems because it adapts to each client's unique operational fingerprint. Kevin nodded enthusiastically. That algorithm caught an attempted intrusion on our system last October. Someone had gotten past our firewall using compromised credentials from a third-party vendor. Traditional security systems wouldn't have flagged it because the credentials were legitimate, but your algorithm detected that the access patterns didn't match the vendor's normal behavior and shut it down before any data was compromised. What would have happened if it hadn't been caught, Mom asked. Worst case scenario complete. Compromise of our manufacturing specifications, customer data, financial records, everything. We're talking about potential losses in the tens of millions, not counting the reputational damage and regulatory fines. Best case scenario, we catch it a few days later after significant damage is already done. He looked at me with genuine respect. Your algorithm literally saved our company from a catastrophe. And Morrison Industries isn't the only client with that story. I've talked to people at other companies using Apex solutions, and they all have similar experiences. Natalie had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Why didn't you tell us any of this? Why let us think you were struggling? The question sparked something hot in my chest. I tried, Natalie. For years I tried. Every family gathering, every phone call, I'd mention a new client or a project milestone, and you'd change the subject or make some comment about how quaint my little business was. I never said quaint, she protested weakly. You said adorable, I shot back. Last Christmas, when I mentioned we'd hired our 65th employee, you patted my hand and said it was adorable that I was still playing entrepreneur, like it was a phase I'd grow out of. The memory of that moment, the condescension in her voice, the dismissive pat still stung. I'd left that Christmas dinner early, claiming a work emergency that didn't exist. Dad cleared his throat. I think we owe you more than an apology. We owe you recognition for what you've accomplished, despite our failure to support you. I didn't need your support, I said, and it came out harsher than I'd intended. I built Apex Solutions on my own because I had to, because no one believed in it but me and the people I hired. But it would have been nice just once to have my family see me for what I actually was instead of what they assumed I must be. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn dinner into... No, I interrupted. Don't apologize. This needed to happen. We've been dancing around this for a decade. Natalie pushed her chair back from the table. I need some air. Before anyone could respond, she stood and walked toward the back porch. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Kevin excused himself and followed, leaving me alone with our parents. Mom reached across the table, her eyes bright with tears. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I need you to know that. Are you, though? The question came out before I could stop it. Or are you proud now that you know the numbers? Would you still be proud if I was making $50,000 a year, but doing work I loved? She flinched. That's not fair, she said quietly. Isn't it? For over a decade, you've asked about my personal life, my dating life, whether I was thinking about settling down. You've never once asked what I was working on or how a project went. You never asked what kept me passionate about the work. Dad rubbed his face tiredly. You're right. We got comfortable letting Natalie's narrative fill in the blanks. She was so confident in her assessments, and we were too lazy to dig deeper. She was threatened by me, I said flatly. And instead of dealing with her own insecurity, she turned me into the family cautionary tale, the daughter who chose wrong and was paying for it. That's not how we saw you, Mom protested. Then, how did you see me? Because from where I sat, it felt like I was the daughter you were vaguely worried about, but didn't know how to help the one you loved, but didn't quite understand. The words hung heavy between us. Outside, I could see Natalie and Kevin in profile through the window. Her arms were crossed defensively. He was speaking his posture patient but firm. I've made a lot of mistakes as a parent, Dad said finally, but dismissing your accomplishments ranks pretty high on the list. I let my own limited understanding of technology and business create blind spots. I couldn't conceptualize what you were building, so I didn't ask the questions that would have helped me understand. I read an article about cybersecurity last month, Mom added quietly. It talked about how companies are desperate for expertise in that field, how there's a massive shortage of qualified consultants. I remember thinking about you wondering if your company did that kind of work, but I didn't call to ask. I told myself you were busy, and I didn't want to bother you. I'm never too busy for my family, I said, but I got tired of feeling like I had to defend my choices every time we talked. It was easier to just avoid the topic entirely. For 10 years, you assumed I was failing because I wasn't following your playbook. You decided what success looked like and couldn't imagine that maybe, just maybe, I'd found my own version of it. Kevin looked uncomfortable now, probably realizing he'd just blown up his girlfriend's family dinner, but he didn't backtrack. I should mention that our company is looking to expand our contract with Apex. The board was incredibly impressed with the results. We're talking about a multi-year renewal worth significantly more than the initial agreement. Natalie stood abruptly. I need some air. She walked out to this back porch, and after a moment, Kevin followed her. I could see them having what looked like an intense conversation. His body language was patient but firm. Hers was defensive, arms crossed, face turned away. Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry if we didn't show that enough. It would have been nice to feel supported along the way, I admitted. Dad cleared his throat. Your mother's right. We should have asked more questions. Should have taken more interest. We just assumed. He trailed off looking ashamed. Assumed I was struggling because Natalie said so. I finished for him. He nodded slowly. Your sister has always been vocal about her opinions. We got lazy. Let her frame the narrative without checking the facts ourselves. Natalie and Kevin returned 15 minutes later. She looked like she'd been crying, mascara slightly smudged, despite obvious attempts to fix it. Kevin's expression was neutral, but he gave me an apologetic nod as they sat back down. I owe you an apology, Natalie said stiffly, not quite meeting my eyes. That was completely inappropriate. I made assumptions about your life without actually knowing anything about it. Why, I asked. Why were you so invested in believing I'd failed? She flinched. Because if you succeeded doing it your way, it meant maybe my way wasn't the only right path. And after Bradley left, after everything I'd built fell apart, I needed to believe that at least I'd made the right professional choices, that my traditional route was superior. The honesty caught me off guard. My success doesn't diminish yours, Natalie, I said. We can both be doing well. We can both make different choices and have them work out. I know that logically, she said quietly, but knowing something and feeling it are different things. She took a shaky breath, fingers twisting the napkin in her lap. When Bradley left me for someone younger, someone he worked with, I felt like everything I'd sacrificed was for nothing. I gave up career opportunities to support his ambitions. I moved across the country twice for his promotions. I did everything a good corporate wife was supposed to do, and he still traded me in. Her voice cracked slightly. And there you were doing everything I'd been taught was risky and irresponsible, and somehow you were thriving. You didn't compromise yourself for anyone. You built something that was entirely yours, and I hated you for it. You didn't hate me, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Maybe hate is too strong, she conceded, but I resented you deeply. Every time Mom mentioned you, every family gathering where you showed up looking happy and fulfilled, it was like salt in a wound I wouldn't let heal. Kevin squeezed her shoulder gently. Tell her the rest. Natalie closed her eyes briefly. I used to Google your company. Late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd look up Apex Solutions. I'd read articles about your growth, see mentions of your clients, find photos of you at industry events. And every time I'd close the browser and tell myself it was all smoke and mirrors, that you were exaggerating your success to cover up how you were barely scraping by. Jesus, Natalie, Mom breathed. I needed you to be failing. Natalie continued looking at me now. Because if you weren't, then I had to face the fact that I'd spent 15 years building a life on someone else's terms, that I'd prioritized stability and status over passion and autonomy, that I'd made myself small to fit into Bradley's world. The vulnerability in her admission shifted something in the room. This wasn't just about her dismissing my career. It was about her own crisis of identity. When did you realize all this, I asked. Tonight, she admitted. When Kevin explained what your company actually does, what you've built, it hit me like a freight train. I've been so wrapped up in my own narrative that I couldn't see reality, couldn't see you. She wiped at her eyes, leaving fresh mascara streaks. Kevin's been trying to tell me for weeks that I talk about you with this weird mix of concern and condescension. He called me out on it multiple times, but I kept insisting I was just worried about you, that I wanted you to have stability. What changed? Kevin asked her gently. Hearing it out loud, Natalie said. hearing myself say that your career was too embarrassing to discuss. The way it sounded so cruel and dismissive. And then watching you sit there calmly while I humiliated you in front of everyone. You didn't even defend yourself. I've defended myself to you for a decade, I pointed out. I was tired. You shouldn't have had to defend yourself at all, she said. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for making you feel like your incredible accomplishments were something to be ashamed of. Dad had been quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke up. This family has a problem with communication. We make assumptions instead of asking questions. We accept surface narratives instead of digging deeper, and we've let Natalie's voice dominate conversations about you without stopping to verify if what she was saying was accurate or fair. He looked at Natalie. That doesn't excuse your behavior. You're an adult and you're responsible for your words and actions. But your mother and I created an environment where that behavior went unchecked. We should have shut down the snide comments years ago. Mom added, every time you made a dig about your sister's choices, we should have called you out. We failed both of you. The admission seemed to cost her something. Mom had always prided herself on being a good parent, on raising successful daughters. Acknowledging this failure visibly pained her. What happens now? Kevin asked his question, directed at the table in general. Now we try to do better, I said. I do, Natalie said immediately. I want to know about your work. Really know it. Not the sanitized version you've been giving, because you learned it wasn't safe to share more. I want that. I want that too, Mom echoed. I want to understand what drives you, what excites you about this field. I want to be the kind of mother who celebrates her daughter's achievements, instead of worrying that she hasn't settled down with a husband and kids. The comment stung a little, the implication that my lack of a traditional family structure was still something she worried about. But I appreciated the honesty. I'm not opposed to relationships, I said. I've dated. It just hasn't been my priority. Building Apex Solutions required everything I had. Maybe that was single-minded of me, but it's what the work demanded. And there's nothing wrong with that, Dad said firmly. You made choices that aligned with your values and goals. That's exactly what we should have taught you to do. Dinner resumed, though the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. Mom brought out the apple pie, but no one seemed particularly hungry. We picked at our slices while the conversation meandered through safer topics, Dad's golf game, Mom's book club, the kids' upcoming school play. But underneath the surface pleasantries, something had cracked open. Years of resentment and misunderstanding had been dragged into the light, examined, and at least partially resolved. As the evening wore on, Kevin drew me into a conversation about the future of cybersecurity. His questions were informed and thoughtful, touching on everything from quantum computing threats to the challenges of securing Internet of Things devices. We're seeing more manufacturers connecting equipment to the internet without thinking through the security implications, I explained. A smart thermostat might seem harmless, but it's a potential entry point into a network. Once someone's inside, they can move laterally to access more valuable systems. Morrison Industries is dealing with exactly that issue, Kevin said. We've got decades-old manufacturing equipment that's been retrofitted with internet connectivity. The efficiency gains are enormous, but the security team has nightmares about it. That's actually a specialty of ours, I said. Industrial control system security. We've done projects for 3 other manufacturing companies with similar challenges. His eyes lit up. Could I get your card? Our current contract with Apex Solutions covers our corporate IT infrastructure, but this is a different issue. I think our VP of Operations would be very interested in a conversation. I pulled a business card from my wallet and handed it over. Have him email me directly. We'll set up a preliminary assessment. Natalie watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. After Kevin moved into the kitchen to help Dad with coffee, she leaned toward me. Is it always like this for you? She asked. People lighting up when they find out what you do in professional settings? Yes, I said. Cybersecurity is a hot topic. Everyone's worried about breaches and compliance and protecting their data. Companies that understand the stakes are willing to invest in solutions. And you're one of the best solutions available, she said. Not quite a question. We're good at what we do, I confirmed. We're not the biggest firm, but we have a reputation for thorough work and innovative approaches. That matters more in this field than sheer size. She absorbed this quietly. I've wasted so much time being jealous of something I didn't even understand. It's not wasted if you learn from it. I offered, though. Part of me still felt bruised by her years of dismissiveness. I want to understand now, she said earnestly. Will you tell me about it? Really tell me, not the abbreviated version you give when you think I'm not actually interested. So I did. I told her about the early days in my studio apartment, cold calling potential clients, and getting hung up on more often than not. I described the first major contract that made me believe the company might actually survive. I explained the technical challenges we'd overcome, the brilliant engineers I'd been lucky enough to hire, the late nights debugging security protocols and stress testing systems. I told her about the moment we landed our 10th client, and I realized we were going to make it. About opening our second office in Boston 3 years in, then adding the Philadelphia location just last spring. About hiring a full-time operations manager. About presenting at my first industry conference and being terrified I'd forget my entire speech. Natalie listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed she was genuinely trying to understand. "What's the hardest part?" she asked, not technically, but emotionally. "The responsibility," I said without hesitation. 70 people depend on Apex Solutions for their livelihoods. Dozens of companies trust us with their most sensitive data and critical infrastructure. Every decision I make ripples out to affect all of them. Some days that weight feels crushing. "But you keep going," she observed. "Because the alternative is giving up on something I built from nothing," I said. "And because my team deserves a leader who doesn't crumble under pressure." I paused. "Also because I'm stubborn as hell and hate the idea of anyone saying, 'I told you so.'" She laughed, surprising both of us. "There's the sister I remember. You always were too proud to admit defeat." "Runs in the family," I said pointedly, and she had the grace to look abashed. Dinner resumed awkwardly. Mom tried to lighten the mood by bringing out the apple pie, and Dad steered the conversation toward safer topics. Kevin asked me thoughtful questions about the cybersecurity industry, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the discussion. He was smart, well-informed, and clearly passionate about his work. As the evening wound down, Natalie pulled me aside while the others were in the kitchen. "I've been a terrible sister," she said bluntly. "He's not wrong. You've been dealing with a lot," I offered, though. I wasn't quite ready to let her completely off the hook. "That's not an excuse for tearing you down to make myself feel better." She took a shaky breath. "I've spent so much energy being jealous of you without even realizing that's what it was." "Jealous," I repeated. "You spent over a decade acting like I was the embarrassing failure of the family because I had the courage to build something from scratch," she said. "I followed every rule, checked every box, did everything right, and my marriage still imploded. Meanwhile, you took this enormous risk, and it paid off." That terrified me because it meant I'd played it safe for nothing. I'd never heard her articulate anything like this before. "Playing it safe isn't nothing," I said. "You have 2 great kids. You built a life that worked for you for a long time. Just because it changed doesn't mean those years were wasted." "Maybe not," she conceded. "But I need to stop measuring my worth against your choices. And I definitely need to stop belittling your accomplishments because they make me uncomfortable." We stood there in the hallway, years of tension hanging between us. "I'd like us to have an actual relationship," I said finally. "One where we know what's really going on in each other's lives." "I'd like that too," she replied. "And I'd love to hear more about your company. Genuinely. Not because Kevin works with you, but because I should have been asking all along." Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Natalie started calling more regularly. She asked real questions about Apex Solutions, what challenges we were facing, what markets we were expanding into, what kept me up at night. She even came by the office one afternoon for a tour. "This is incredible," she said, watching our security operations center where analysts monitored client systems in real time. "You built all of this," she added quietly. "With a lot of help," I acknowledged. "I had a vision, but it took brilliant people to make it reality." She met several of my team members, including Veronica, my chief technology officer, who'd been with me since year 2. They talked for 20 minutes about the technical challenges of securing cloud infrastructure, and I watched Natalie's expression shift from polite interest to genuine fascination. On her way out, she hugged me tightly. "Thank you for showing me this, for letting me see what you've actually been doing all these years." "Thank you for being willing to see it," I replied. Kevin and Natalie's relationship continued to develop, and I got to know him better through several double dates and family gatherings. He was good for her, challenging her assumptions while supporting her growth. He didn't tolerate her tendency to make cutting remarks disguised as jokes, and I watched her become more mindful of her words. The contract renewal he'd mentioned at dinner came through in August. Morrison Industries expanded their engagement with Apex Solutions to include comprehensive training programs for their entire IT department. It was a significant win for us both financially and reputationally. During the contract signing, Kevin pulled me aside. "I want to apologize again for putting you on the spot at that dinner. It wasn't my place to speak up like that. Actually, I think it needed to happen, I said. Natalie and I had been circling around these issues for years. Someone needed to force the conversation. She's working on it, he assured me. Seeing things from your perspective has been eye-opening for her. She talks about wanting to be the sister you deserve. It's a process I acknowledged, but we're making progress. Our parents also made an effort to be more involved. Dad started sending me articles about cybersecurity trends, often with notes like, "Made me think of you." Or is this the kind of thing your company deals with? Mom asked if she could attend one of my speaking engagements, and she sat in the front row beaming while I presented on building resilient security cultures. The holidays that year felt different. When the family gathered for Thanksgiving, there was no tension about career comparisons or veiled judgments. Natalie asked insightful questions about a recent project, and I listened attentively when she talked about starting her own consulting practice, helping recently divorced women navigate financial planning. You inspired me, she admitted over pumpkin pie. Watching you build something meaningful made me wonder what I could create if I stopped being afraid of failing. You're going to be great at it, I told her honestly. You're detail-oriented, empathetic, and you understand what your clients are going through firsthand. She launched her practice in January, and I referred several contacts her way. Her business grew steadily, and I watched her gain confidence with each new client. She called me regularly for advice, not about the technical aspects, but about the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship. How did you handle the self-doubt, she asked one evening. The voice that says you're not qualified, you're going to fail. Everyone will see you're a fraud. By proving it wrong, one small success at a time, I replied. And by remembering that imposter syndrome is usually a sign you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, which means you're growing. That spring, Apex Solutions was acquired by a larger technology firm for a sum I'd never imagined possible when I started the company in my studio apartment. The acquisition terms allowed me to stay on as CEO with full operational autonomy while gaining access to resources that would let us expand nationally. Natalie was one of the first people I called. Holy shit, she breathed when I told her the news. You did it. You actually did it. We're celebrating this weekend. I want you there, I told her. The celebration at our office was everything I'd hoped. Champagne flowed. Team members shared stories about our journey, and there was genuine joy at what we'd accomplished together. Natalie brought Kevin, and they both mingled easily with my staff. I watched her laugh at someone's joke and thought about how far we'd come from that disastrous dinner. During a quiet moment, she found me on the balcony overlooking the city. I'm sorry I almost missed all of this, she said softly. I'm sorry I was so wrapped up in my own insecurity that I couldn't celebrate you. You're here now, I replied. That's what matters. She leaned against the railing beside me. You know what the craziest part is? Being your sister, learning from your journey, has made me so much better at my own business. I tell my clients about you all the time, about having the courage to bet on yourself, even when people doubt you. Even when your own sister doubted you, I added with a wry smile. Especially then, she agreed. Because if you could succeed despite my negativity, imagine what they can do with actual support. We stood there watching the sunset over the skyline, two sisters who'd finally learned to exist in the same space without competition or judgment. The journey had been messy and painful, but maybe those were the only kinds of journeys worth taking. Kevin joined us, wrapping an arm around Natalie's shoulders. Your team is looking for you, he told me. Something about a toast. I headed back inside to find Veronica gathering everyone. She handed me a glass of champagne and clinked hers against it. To the woman who turned a crazy idea and a studio apartment into this, she announced, for refusing to give up even when people thought we were nuts, to Apex Solutions and wherever we go from here. To all of you, I countered, none of this happens without the team who believed in the vision and worked their asses off to make it real. The room erupted in cheers. I caught Natalie's eye across the crowd, and she raised her glass to me with a genuine smile. 10 years of building something meaningful, of proving wrong. Everyone who doubted me, of finally getting my sister to see me clearly, it all converged in that perfect moment. Later, as the party wound down, Mom and Dad arrived. They'd driven up from Connecticut specifically to celebrate. Dad pulled me into a tight hug. Your mother and I were just talking about that first year when you maxed out your credit cards to keep the business afloat. We were so worried. You didn't show it, I said. We wanted to be supportive, he admitted. But honestly, we didn't fully understand what you were building. He glanced over at Natalie, who was deep in conversation with one of my engineers. I think we let your sister's skepticism influence us more than we should have. That was our failure, not yours. I forgive you, I said simply because what else was there to say? They were here now, proud and present, and that had to be enough. Mom kissed my cheek. You've always known your own mind. Even as a little girl, you'd decide something and nothing could sway you. I should have trusted that more. The evening stretched into night, and eventually people began heading home. Kevin and Natalie were among the last to leave. At the door, Natalie hugged me fiercely. I'm so damn proud of you, she whispered, and I'm grateful you didn't give up on me. You're my sister, I replied, even when you were insufferable. She laughed, pulling back with tears in her eyes. Wasn't I? Kevin still gives me grief about that dinner. That dinner changed everything, I pointed out. Sometimes you need someone to hold up a mirror and show you exactly how terrible you're being, she acknowledged. Thank God Kevin was willing to do that. After they left, I walked through the empty office, looking at the photos on the walls, documenting our growth. Team outings, product launches, awards, ceremonies. Every image represented countless hours of work, moments of doubt overcome, and small victories that accumulated into something extraordinary. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Lunch next week. I want to pick your brain about scaling my practice. Also just want to hang out with my badass sister. I smiled and typed back, absolutely. It's a date.